So we're now ready to start painting the old Delco fan, and here's the base, and you can see it's got some heavy pitting, and I've cleaned and sanded and done everything I'm gonna do. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna apply my aluminum primer first. I've never used this before. I don't imagine it's anything spectacular, but I've never tried this stuff yet, so we're gonna give it a try and see what it does for us. Claim to fame is it's designed to be a primer for aluminum. You shake it really well, and we're gonna see what it does. If we start seeing fish eyes, then I know I didn't do my job in degreasing, but hopefully that doesn't happen. Once you start seeing fish eyes in a painting project, that's your cue to stop what you're doing and go back to the drawing board because you've done screwed up. But so far so good. Is that a crack? No, that's a defect in the mold, I think. Yeah, it happened here too. No, that's just that was in the casting. Sometimes you get some gnarly defects show up when you're priming and painting. Hopefully it doesn't happen to us right here. Hopefully the stuff's going on nice and smooth. Looks pretty good. Looks really good. Make sure my overspray is not going anywhere, like all over the house. Okay, well, I think that came out all right. I think that came out quite all right. You can see this right here. That was in the mold too. Some high quality stuff. But it looks like the pits and defects have largely been filled in by the primer. Okay, let's get another part out here. Okay, so some parts are going to remain unpainted. For example, the neck. I don't feel it needs to be painted at all. I'm not going to paint it. I don't think it was originally painted to begin with, so it will remain uncovered. The blades, they were more than likely painted originally. These I'm going to polish up a little bit nicer with some steel wool, and they're going to be lacquered in a clear lacquer. And the housing that goes underneath covers up the oscillator linkage. That also will remain unpainted. And these parts will be painted in black gloss, high gloss black. I used a different primer on the motor housing because that is made of steel. So that is a standard high build primer that I used on there. And this is the aluminum primer, as it was used only on aluminum parts. And we're going to let this sit out here for about an hour or so, and then I'll bring it back in the house and we'll let it cure overnight, and then we're going to top coat it with black paint. Hopefully by that point I'll have the wiring and I'll be able to start wiring things up. But we're going to let the top coat cure for a couple of days before we start handling it too much. Okay, I think we're ready for a top coat. I've got my brand new can of Krylon black. And let's start with the base. A little light dusting. Now for the base coat, or for the top coat, I'm using Krylon Rust Tough Black enamel. Another one that I don't think I've used before on anything like this. You're going to get a lot of orange peel with these cheap spray cans, but that's okay. I'm not going for, you know, winning medals here. But always paint with a wet edge and try not to allow for any overspray. I always paint do the back first, and then we'll flip it over. Reason being, we got to flip it on the other side to do the front, and in doing that, we won't be able to flip it back on the front again to recoat the back. So we're going to do the back first, and then we'll worry about the front side. I should be able to do this in one coat. Black paint has really good coverage, so very good opacity. I didn't wet sand anything. I usually don't. It's a lot of work. So I'm a lazy restorer, which is why none of my projects end up looking like they do on TV. From the guys with the expensive vans and TV shows, you know, they have the budget and time to do it right. I don't. Make sure we get inside that handle. And we're going to let that tack up, and then we're going to do the front of the motor. So, don't forget the bearing cap. Bearing housing, I mean. And also, painting outside is kind of a nightmare in and of itself, because a windstorm can roll in any minute and destroy our hard work. So, I'm going to give this another shot. It's going to look beautiful as a finished product. So, I'm pretty confident about that. No matter what we do, it'll be better than it was. There's a little bit of a defect going on there, but okay. I'm going to flip this over. Ugh. Careful. Ooh. Yeah, nothing I ever do looks like it, you know, like it was done professionally. I'm not a professional, and I don't ever want to be. I just don't have the time, don't have the patience. But that's life. That's what you get what you pay for, I guess. Got a few orange, yeah, got a little bit of a fisheye going on there. I don't like that, but from 20 feet it looks okay. I'm going to shoot this one more time. That's as good as it's going to get. Give that another coat. So while these pieces are curing indoors, I went ahead and shut down the fan that's circulating the air down here, so that way you don't get any dust blowing around. This is just going to sit inside the basement until I feel that it's hard enough to be assembled. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a long time. 3, 4, 5, a week maybe, before this paint is completely hardened. But boy, it's had a shiny finish. And yeah, there's imperfections galore. I just noticed a hair or something blue onto it. I mean, you know, it's impossible to get quality finishes when you don't wet sand and paint in a dust-free environment. It's just, you're just not going to get, you know, the great results. Just not going to happen. But again, better than it was. That's my motto, better than it was. Yeah, that's just a little hair. I can pick that off right now, and actually I'm going to probably do that and touch it up. But I've got to find a pair of tweezers or something. See if I can get it. Let's see. Oh, now I got to touch it up. Use the rotor of the motor as a makeshift blade hole. Lacquering. Painting. It's starting to clear up a little bit in some spots, but yeah, if we have any cloudy or milkiness to it, we'll just strip it all off and start over. It's not a big deal. And there's little dents on this blade here from when they were probably throwing stuff at it. I don't know. I imagine this fan hasn't had a great life, or at least not a perfect one. But yeah, see that milkiness right there? That's because I put it on probably too heavy, and it is a little on the humid side, outside right now. So, and there's a little nick right there that I didn't address. Good news, everyone! The lacquer is clearing up nicely. I was hoping it would, and it did. But you can see I have a buffing wheel, and I bought it for projects like this, but it mounts to my bench grinder, and I don't have an arbor that will let me mount it to this drill press. So I thought about using it on this fan blade and giving it a nice polished finish, but there's no way I'm going to maneuver this blade around a bench grinder. So I kind of decided, let's just see what it looks like with just lacquer. And you know what? It ain't perfect, but I'm actually okay with it. When I did the Vortilex that runs in my living room almost every day, I didn't do any lacquer at all. And the blades still look pretty good. I may take them off and do the lacquer thing. But now we're going to move on to the grill. And I'm just using, this is 00 steel wool. And all I'm really doing here is I'm removing any loose paint, any rust buildup on the struts and front guard, and kind of going over it one wire at a time. It takes a lot of time to do this, to do it right. I'm just doing a quickie cleanup just to throw a couple coats of paint on there, but you know, it's a lot easier if you're working on something even older, from the 20s or the 19 teens, when they really weren't all that ornamental. This one has a great design in it. One of the things I love about this fan is the grill. It's one of the most beautiful fan grills from the pre-OSHA era that I've ever seen. Just a beautiful design. Looks like a flower. And the head badges, I like to take the head badges off, but in this case I couldn't. The head badge is wrapped around this center here very well, and I don't want to run the risk of ruining it. The head badge is probably a good portion of the fan's resale value. If the head badge is junk, it's not going to be very easy to sell, if that's your end game. Nor will it have any real intrinsic value. I mean, the head badge is again a huge part of what makes these old fans so collectible, because they were often adorned with logos of companies that have been long gone for decades, and some of those logos are actually quite beautiful. One of the fans I've always wanted to get my hands on was a GE, I believe it was a Tradewinds, and it had a picture of a masted ship, like a sailing vessel. I just think it's a beautiful, it got a stormy sea. Just a beautiful logo, and I've always wanted one for that reason. Ow, just cut myself with this steel wool. But, you know, we're not going nuts here. We're just cleaning up the wire. And this is typical of these old fans. They do get light rust, and that just accelerates. Once they start to rust, the paint loses adhesion, and they just look like hell. But it doesn't take much to make them look good again. One of the reasons I really knock on Pinterest a lot is you find a lot of these old fans with like custom paint schemes, like you know, sports team colors, and you know, it's one thing to take an old fan like this, which was black all around, every part was black, and then when you're putting it back together again, you might expose some bare metal, like I'm doing with this fan. I'm exposing the bare metal in the blade set because I think it looks good, and it does. Prove me wrong. Change my opinion. And I'm also leaving some other key components that were molded in brass. I'm leaving them in brass because I think brass really was a good look for that time period. Regardless of what the manufacturer may have thought, I think it's beautiful. But what you don't see me doing is taking a fan like this, which is a complete, very restorable antique, and painting it hot pink. Not doing that. Now, I'm not innocent. I have done that. My 1938 Robin Myers, I painted it red. I'm not proud of it, but I did. But I'm going to undo it. It looks like crap. The paint isn't holding up, and I need to do a complete restore on it. And what's even worse is that one's a pedestal fan, which are even harder to find. Pedestal fans are like the holy grail of fan collectors because they're so hard to find. You just don't see them. And when you do, they want all the money for them. And the great thing about the pedestal fans is they're very usable. I use mine all summer long. It really needs to be restored though. I mean, I've had it for like 11 years now. And it really, really needs a proper restoration. And I've used it for 11 years. But there we go. Get most of the aluminum. Now there's another way you can do this, but because I have the head badge still attached, I do not want to run the risk of ruining that poor little head badge. But if this were any other fan, what I would probably do with it, or if I could get the head badge off without risking damage, I would take this whole thing and I would clean it with paint stripper, just like I did the other parts. I'd take all the paint off, and then I would soak it in a tub of Evaporust, or use the gel version. Get all the rust off, and heavily wash it. And from there, I would paint it with a nice coat of gloss black. But because I don't want to run the risk of any chemical damage to the printed head badge, which is in perfect condition, I've opted not to do that. That was a choice I made, and I will have to live with that decision. I want to get the back side of these wires too. Just get all the loose crap off. The paint that I use is designed to be sprayed over rust in certain circumstances, and I think we'll be okay with that here. It's not going to look beautiful. It's not going to look perfect, but it won't look bad. I'm pretty sure of that. Sandpaper can be used, or emery cloth, but I find it to be too unwieldy. It's just not, doesn't have the flexibility, and it is a little bit aggressive for what I'm trying to accomplish here. So that's why we're not using sandpaper. But looking good though. Let's get all that loose stuff off. I can actually taste the iron oxide in the air. Just enough of it is getting airborne. I need a taste. It's like if you're sanding a wall or some trim boards in your house, and you start to get a sweet taste in your mouth, and your house is of a certain age, pat yourself on the back. You are stripping off lead paint and heating it. Now, I haven't had that happen. I've heard of it. I know better. But anyway, I think that's going to do it for now. And then we're just going to clean it off with a dry, clean towel. And then we're going to shoot it. Alright, so I applied another coat of paint on most of these parts. These three. This one's good. And look at that shine. Oh my god. Look at that shine. So, yeah, a couple of days, we'll let this cure. Still got that little mark there from that little hair that landed on the damn thing. What the hell? Anyway, well, that's that. So, yeah. But, yeah, got a nice high gloss finish. The grill, I'm going to probably throw another coat on that. Just a little bit. Probably spend the rest of the can on the grill. And then blades, those are good. The blades look good to me. And somehow this landed in a way that I can't get it off. But, yeah, the blades look pretty good to me for what they are. Now, I use lacquer paint on brass and aluminum clear because it adheres pretty well to it. In fact, that's what, people who repair and restore brass instruments, that's what they use is lacquer. So it levels off real nicely. It gives a very beautiful finish. There's no orange peel with lacquer. It just looks fantastic. So the mail just came, and this is what arrived. And we're going to look at this together for the first time. This is the electrical wiring that I ordered for the pan. Ooh. Oh, that's pretty. Oh my. Definitely not historically accurate, but who gives a... look at that. Look at that. That is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It is shiny like gold. And with the brass accent pieces, oh man, that's gonna look sharp. That's gonna look sharp. Beautiful. There's enough here for the head wire and the power cord. More than enough. That actually came out pretty good. There's 2 coats of paint, maybe 3, on this whole thing, and that head badge is very well preserved. Very, very pleased with how that came out. So, there you go. And these parts are still drying and curing and hardening and doing what they do. We're going to give them plenty of time, plenty of space to get that done. Let that process take over. This piece I'm going to have to recoat separately. Got a little bit of misty ghosting over there. I'm going to have to buy another can of paint. I ran out, so I'm going to have to buy one more can to finish the jarb. No big deal. It's all good. And then we get to focus some of our attention on the bottom cover. Now this right here, we're going to have to get a can of Evaporust, and we're going to just let this soak in the Evaporust. Get the rust off without any abrasives. We're going to preserve the rubber, or what's left of the rubber bumpers. They're still intact, so we're going to leave them alone. Try to leave them alone. You know, I actually thought about doing something a little different. I thought about covering this with felt. I'm still thinking about it. Ultimately, I don't think that'll be a great idea, so yeah. We're going to have to figure this out. Normally you would take these off, but because the rubber is 80... Now to bring back luster to old head badges, data plates, bare steel, let's say you have some steel parts that you want to remain a metal finish and you don't want them to rust, you can spray them with a thin coat of clear lacquer, as I've been using on the blades. I'm going to show you what that did to the head badge. So if you saw it earlier, it was looking kind of haggard, a little faded, a little worn, but a coat of clear lacquer brought a nice shiny luster back to it, and that's pretty much permanent. I did the same thing with some hardware that I wanted to remain bare metal. For example, the head or the neck joint key or tightening key, wing bolt, whatever. I did that a couple coats of thin lacquer. That'll never rust as long as it doesn't chip or peel. It shouldn't. I also did the same thing to the oil cup. The oil cup is made of brass that's been plated in chrome, so this will keep it shiny, no polishing necessary. The neck joint itself has also been done, as well as the bare steel arm, and a nice thin coat of lacquer than that. I also did it to the linkage cover and the brass slug that supports the counter shaft. And last but not least, the data plate. It brings a nice luster back to it and helps to protect it and prevent it from rusting. It prevents the Just gives it another wear layer, if you will. It makes it look good in the process. And lacquer, lacquer is one of my favorite paints because it goes on so smooth. It levels off very, very nicely, and it dries quick. I use lacquer where I can. In fact, the next fan that I do, I'm going to be doing the one that I've got upstairs. I'm actually thinking of doing a lacquer finish on that instead of enamel, because I feel that the lacquer, well, it'll just look that much better. So this might be the last one I do in enamel. I mean, enamel's great stuff. It's durable. What enamel gives you is durability, but it doesn't always go down smooth, and it's very fussy. I find lacquer to be very, very forgiving. And one of the projects that I used lacquer for was my 1937 Philco radio. I used a lacquer finish on the dial, and I think I used it somewhere else on that too. But notably, I used it on the dial, and it came out absolutely beautiful. So that's something to consider. I'm going to try using lacquer. Now, what lacquer does, one of its disadvantages is, I believe, in cured form, it's just a hair softer than enamel, so it might be more prone to scratching and rubbing, but it can also be buffed easily too. Enamel's a lot harder. So, all right, onward and upward.